My name is Sahand Sahebdivani, son of Ali Reza Sahebdivani, grandson of Shapur Sahebdivani, great-grandson of Reza Sahebdivani, great-great-grandson of Ali Sahebdivani. And it's an incredible honor to perform here in front of you, TEDx crowd in Delft. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have been introducing myself like that for the past 10 years or even more. For the past 10 years or more, myself as an Iranian storyteller in the Netherlands, I've been getting on stage and I've been giving people the names of my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. In Saudi Arabia, I would almost be considered a proper citizen, a respected man, because there, if you know the names of your fathers for 7 generations, you are someone who counts in society well. Where are the women? Where are the mothers? I know the name of my mother. I doubt with the name of my grandmother. I know how to call her. I'm not sure what is written in her passport. And beyond that, it's a fog. And this is something that I recently realized. And I have to say, it's a hard realization as someone who is this modern Middle Eastern feminist to go and talk about women's rights and to realize that what has been passed on, what do we have? Now, when you're from my family, it's not such a miracle. It's not such a wonder that me, as a boy, I would have this fascination with my father's side of the family. You have to realize most Iranian men, they grow up in the arms of their mothers until they're about 18. In my case, well, I would sit on the shoulders of my father at the age of 3, eating my patakemet, my fries and mayo, and then wiping my hand in his hair. And every time my father would say, "This is the last time you're sitting on my shoulders eating your fries." But my father is the one who always spoiled me. And always, I would just have to beg, not even with words, just looking into his eyes. And I would be there. Not very common, for an Iranian man who usually, they're waiting for the moment that they can kill their fathers. This is a metaphor, I'm a storyteller. We don't literally kill our fathers. In our case, it would be beating him with a game of backgammon or a wrestling match or a political discussion. But, I myself, even the one who is supposed to be a storyteller, who is supposed to collect the stories only at this late age, I started to realize what an amazing story my mother has. This woman who was just there. And this is also what I said to my father. I said, "Papa, I heard your stories. I know that you're a direct descendant of ancient Iranian heroes. If this was a different century, you would be riding into battle on your horse. How did you end up with someone like my mother?" It's a tricky question to ask. It seems that I'm being disrespectful towards her. The only thing is that I asked it because it seemed to be that there were no stories there. And then my father told me a story that completely made me realize why someone like my father, the man of the big stories, fell in love with someone like my mother. You see, when my father was 18, 19, he moved into a house in Tehran with his parents, a new house. And across the street, there was this incredibly religious family. My father at the time, he was a bit of a drinker. Now, I know in Delft you get Snickers, but when I tell the story in Iran, where that's illegal, just mentioning it, people go, "Ooh." So I'm going to say it again. He was a bit of a drinker. He was a bit of a smoker. He was a bit of a communist. So you can imagine them living in this house across the street from this religious family. They didn't have so much contact. Now, who lived in that house? A young girl who at that time was only 15 years old. And this girl, she was the eldest of a few siblings, brothers and sisters. And this girl had perfect grades in her school. This girl knew that if she kept her grades up, she would be accepted in the best universities of the country. And when this girl saw that a handsome man, young man, moved in across the street, she thought, "No, I have to be serious. I have to study. This is the story that I will make for myself. So every day she would come home after school, she would have her school books, and with them, she would go to the top floor of the house, far away from her younger brothers and sisters who would play and make too much noise. There she could concentrate. And after studying for months and months and months, the report card of that year came in, and what do you think? Her perfect grades had completely dropped. You see, that room was the one room that gave her a clear view into the bedroom of the neighbors across the street. So this poor girl, at that time, she didn't know who would accept her, what school, but she knew exactly what she wanted. At 15, coming from a very strict and religious family, and she knew already that if her choice was this man who was a bit of a drinker, a smoker, a communist, her parents would never allow for her to meet. Now, how did she do it in the end? To have this boy, this man, meet her. She would wait for her mother to go to the market. And then on those days, she would open the windows of the ground floor and sit under them so that you couldn't see her. But she had already observed the times that this man would leave the house. So at those hours, she would just start to sing. Now, at first, my father started passing this house and suddenly heard this singing, this beautiful angelic voice, and he had no idea where it came from. It couldn't be from that house, of course. And then again, and then again, and then again, and again, until after a whole year, what happens? What was the emotion he felt? Love. I like how you say it, so softly flittering in the room. Indeed, he was in love with a voice that was connected to a face that he hadn't even met. Now, they did fall in love. They did get married, even though my mother's side of the family decided that my mother should marry a proper Muslim boy. And proper Muslim boys were introduced to her, but one after the other, they were rejected. And then they thought, okay, if we can't change her mind, maybe we can do something about his. So he was invited into the house of my mother, and he had to sit down, and my mother playing, pretending to be this perfect young housewife in training. She would serve the guest, but in front of him, there was this imam, a religious figure, who spoke night after night after night about the value and the benefit of religion, and especially how you should treat women. And out of politeness, this man listened and listened and listened, but let me tell you, when they got married, not only did he never turn into a proper Muslim, it was even my mother who turned into a communist. Well, we fast forward a few years. Being communists, being not religious after the revolution in Iran was quite hard. My first memory of my country is actually the memory of leaving my country. And it's only recently that I realized how much strength there was in that story, because that memory was of me being on a horse. And that memory was of me being there behind a smuggler, a Kurdish smuggler who was paid to bring this family from Iran into the West. And my mother at that time was sitting on her horse alone by herself, and to this side there was mountains, ice, rocks, and to that side nothing. And it was the middle of the night, and all that I wanted as a 3-year-old was to be with my mother on her horse. But she was a woman from the city. She had never been on a horse, let alone in the middle of the night, on rocky, icy mountains. We made it. We came to the Netherlands. And only now, thinking back, I realize how much strength it took for my mother, a young woman, to leave the country in the middle of the night with her 3-year-old and to entrust him to this man that she didn't know, hoping to arrive here in safety. Now, when we came here to the Netherlands, we were the first Iranian refugees to be here. We didn't know anyone. And at that time, calling to Iran, it was 4, 5, 6 guilders a minute. So what did we do? We found out that you had these pay cells, and if you put your coins in a plastic sleeve and you put them in, then you could pull them out again. So like this, all the Iranians, they would call back home. It was our only line of communication. Of course, the Dutch government, they caught on, and they fixed all of the payphones so that you couldn't do the trick, except for one that the community found. So imagine now the whole of the Iranian community going to that one payphone, standing in line, and of course, because you have unlimited calls, everyone took their time speaking to their families, their relatives. So there's this huge line of Iranians, and they can be quite loud, eh? And they're talking, and they're chatting, and they're chatting, and they're talking, until at some point, the window opens, and one of the neighbors calls out, "Oh, you Israelis, you're always so loud." At that moment, my mother shows what a proud Iranian she is. She looks up and she says, "No, we're not Israelis. We are Iranians." And my father's like, no. He's calling us bad things. Let him think we're Israelis. It's fine. When I spoke to Iran, the only woman that I spoke to was my grandmother. And I loved my grandmother. I loved my grandmother to bits. She was my umbilical cord to the country and the culture that we had left behind. So imagine my excitement when, after a few years of living in this country, by this time I was 10 years old, my father and my mother told me that my grandmother, this old Iranian matriarch, would visit the Netherlands. And I was counting the days for the summer holiday to start, and finally, we were at Schiphol. The plane landed, the guests came, all the families, they embraced their loved ones that they hadn't seen for years, and our guest came, and it was a penguin. Yeah, you have to imagine. An old woman with a chador so that only a bit of her nose sticks out and her glasses, and she's walking like this. She was a human penguin, and I was confused. Is this the woman that goes with that voice? Well, we took her home, and on the second day, I decided to show her the park, because as a kid, that was my favorite place in Amsterdam. We walked around, me and the penguin. And as we were in the park, my grandmother, who had heard that I loved nature, she said, "Oh, look at those ducks. Aren't they amazing?" And I said, "Yes, grandmother, they are. Let's thank God for a moment that he made those ducks for us." Now you have to imagine, I'm 10 years old, but my parents are communists. So I had a few ideas about God, but it's my grandmother, so let's not insult. And I say, "Yes, grandmother, let's thank God." Okay. 2 steps later, now she looks at the trees. "Aren't those amazing trees?" "Yes, grandmother. Let's thank God that he made those trees." And after 2 steps, again and again and again and again, my grandmother had decided that if my mother was going to end up in hell because she married a communist, maybe she can save her grandchild. And that summer holiday was a mess. It was a waste of a summer holiday, and as a kid, that's the best season. My grandmother, she hated the Netherlands. She hated the fact that people were running around naked in the street. Well, they had short sleeves. That they were having sex in the street. Well, they were holding hands. And like this, we passed the days, the weeks, the months, until in her last week in the Netherlands. We were sitting in the house of friends, as Iranians do. They're always visiting, and there is always a big group of people. And the TV was on, and we were chatting, and suddenly we saw scenes of Iranians in the street. Millions of Iranians. And someone said, shh, quiet, turn on the noise. And then we heard the news that Ayatollah Khomeini had died. Now, for us, that was like telling us that Hitler had died. That was like telling us that the reason why so many of our friends were killed, that he was gone. Now, maybe we could return soon. But the moment we wanted to celebrate, suddenly we saw that my grandmother, she was beating her face and saying, "Voy, voy, 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 voy." And we realized, for her, it's the Messiah. It's the prophet that has died. And her prophet had decided to die while she was in the land of the infidel. So the only thing that they could do is to take my grandmother and to put her in a side room, and there comfort her, while in the living room people were drinking alcohol and celebrating, not too loud of course, and also taking turns to comfort my grandmother so that the rest could come and celebrate. Well, the next day she took a flight home, an early flight, to go back and to leave us here. And it's in that story that I realized that even though my father is the storyteller and he can trace his family back for so many generations, my mother, the one who could live in a family that was like hers and managed to be strong enough to marry a father, a husband, someone like my father, that is a living hero and someone that I should honor today, and not only today at this TEDxWomen event, but every single day of my life. Thank you very much.